October 25th, 1415, northern France. The ground is wet with rain from the night before, thick with mud, and heavy with the weight of fate. It is St. Crispin's Day, a day that will forever be etched into history as the date of the Battle of Agincourt. On one side, the English army, battered, hungry, and vastly outnumbered. Led by King Henry V, they were not supposed to be here, not supposed to challenge the mighty French army on their own soil. But Henry had come into France with ambition in his heart and a claim to the French throne on his mind. After weeks of campaigning, his army was exhausted, reduced significantly from its original strength of over 10,000 due to disease and skirmishes. Now, with fewer than 6,000 men, most of them lightly armed longbowmen, they found themselves cornered near the village of Agincourt. On the other side stood the French army, over 20,000 strong. They were knights and men-at-arms clad in shining armor, the elite of France. Confident in their numbers and dismissive of their ragged opponents, they anticipated a swift victory. The odds were squarely against the English. By every measure of military calculus, the French should have triumphed with ease. But battles are not fought with numbers alone. As dawn broke and the battlefield was revealed, the stakes became clear. The terrain played a critical role. The narrow, muddy field was flanked by dense woods on either side, limiting the mobility of the French cavalry and channeling their forces into a bottleneck. It was a stroke of luck for the English, transforming the battlefield into a trap that Henry was determined to spring. Before the battle, King Henry V addressed his troops. His speech, immortalized in Shakespeare's play years later, was filled with inspiration and camaraderie. Henry reminded his soldiers that the fight ahead was not about glory or riches, but survival. He urged them to stand firm against the odds. These men, ordinary soldiers, would become part of something extraordinary. With the roar of the French army filling the air, the battle began. The first strike came from the longbowmen, perhaps the greatest weapon in Henry's arsenal. The English archers had positioned themselves behind sharpened stakes planted in the ground, designed to ward off cavalry charges. From their vantage points, they unleashed volley after volley of arrows. The results were devastating. The French knights charged, their brightly polished armor making them appear invincible as they surged forward. But the mud worked against them, weighing them down and slowing their approach. Horses faltered and fell, while men struggled to free themselves from the sucking earth. All the while, the arrows rained down in relentless waves, piercing through armor, puncturing shields, and sowing chaos in the French ranks. The French attack faltered, but pride and determination drove them onward. With reinforcements arriving in waves, the next charge pressed ahead, desperate to break through the English lines. But the bottleneck of the battlefield, the narrow space choked with mud and fallen bodies, ensured they could not regroup effectively. The French army's superior numbers began to work against them. The mud became a graveyard, claiming not just the wounded, but also suffocating those unlucky enough to fall beneath the crush. King Henry, standing amongst his men, fought alongside them, not as a distant commander, but as a warrior, his crown heavy with the responsibility of survival. His leadership inspired his troops, his determination became their determination. By midday, it was clear the tide had turned. Against all logic, the English were holding firm. Their disciplined lines, their deadly archers, and the resilience of their fighting spirit created the perfect storm of resistance. The French army fractured, their morale broken by the unyielding wall of English might and the overwhelming uncertainty of their defeat. As the fighting faded, the casualties became clear. The French army had lost thousands. Estimates placed their dead at over 10,000 men, including many nobles and knights of France. The English, just several hundred by comparison. It was an unprecedented victory for Henry V and his army, a triumph of strategy, of terrain, and of sheer willpower. The Battle of Agincourt was more than just a victory for England. It was a symbol of ingenuity over arrogance, of determination over complacency. For Henry V, it cemented his place in history not just as a king, but as a warrior who defied the odds. For the people of England, it became a rallying cry, proof that even the smallest force could achieve greatness when united in purpose. Even today, the events of that rainy October morning resonate as one of the most remarkable battles in medieval history. The mud of Agincourt may have long since dried, but the memory of what was achieved there will never fade.